Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Blake always believed the first few months with a newborn would be tough, but he never imagined the real test wouldn't come from sleepless nights or dirty diapers. Little Emma was only 2 weeks old when he realized he was already completely in love. Every sleepy smile, every tiny sigh as she slept in his arms made it all worthwhile. At 25, a manager at an electronics store on the outskirts of Atlanta, Blake had meticulously planned for his daughter's arrival. He renovated the nursery, assembled the crib with his own hands, and read 3 books on fatherhood. He was ready, or at least he thought he was. Harper, his 23-year-old wife, was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home. They'd met at a networking event 2 years earlier, and Blake had been instantly captivated by her creative energy and her brown eyes that always seemed to be plotting some new project. They married quickly, impulsively, and passionately, and Emma arrived 9 months later as the cherry on top. During the pregnancy, Harper glowed. She posted pictures of her growing belly, decorated the nursery with illustrations she'd drawn herself, and talked excitedly about how present and dedicated a mother she'd be. But something changed after the birth. In the first few weeks, Blake noticed Harper slept too heavily. When Emma cried at 2 in the morning, it was always him stumbling out of bed to warm a bottle, change a diaper, and rock her back to sleep while Harper stayed motionless on the other side of the bed. At first, Blake chalked it up to postpartum exhaustion. After all, she'd gone through 14 hours of labor. She deserved to rest. So he compensated, waking up for the 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. shifts before dragging himself to work at 9. His co-workers commented on his dark circles, but Blake just smiled and said it came with the territory. The first 2 months were challenging, but Blake stayed committed, hoping Harper would gradually take on more responsibility as she recovered. But when Emma turned 2 months old, instead of becoming more involved, Harper seemed to pull away further. That's when she announced over breakfast that she'd found a support group for new moms. "It's important for my mental health," she explained, scrolling distractedly on her phone while Blake prepared a bottle. "It's kind of an alternative group, run by volunteers, younger moms who meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays after their husbands get home from work. It'll help me process everything, you know. Motherhood is intense." Blake blinked, surprised but supportive. Of course she needed support. Of course it made sense. "What time do you get back?" he asked. "Usually around 10:30, Harper replied without looking up from her screen. "But sometimes we grab coffee afterward to keep talking. Might be midnight." Blake swallowed his concern. Midnight seemed late for a new mom, but who was he to judge what she needed? On the first Tuesday, Harper left at 7 p.m. wearing tight jeans and a low-cut top Blake hadn't seen her wear in months. "You look beautiful," he said genuinely, holding Emma against his chest. Harper smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks. I need to feel human again, not just a breastfeeding machine." She kissed Emma's forehead quickly and left. Blake heard her car start up and drive away. Emma started crying 10 minutes later, and he spent the next 3 hours alternating between bottles, diaper changes, and pacing the hallway. Harper came back at 12:15 a.m., smelling strongly of perfume and something Blake couldn't quite place. She went straight to the shower. Thursday was the same. So was the next Tuesday. Blake began noticing a pattern. Harper left looking put together, returned late, and always showered immediately. She never talked much about the group. When he asked how it went, she gave vague answers. "It was good. Helps to talk to other women going through the same thing." Once, Blake asked exactly where the group met, and Harper paused for a second before answering, "At a church downtown. They lend us the hall." It was at the belated baby shower, organized by Harper's friends 3 months after Emma's birth, that the first crack appeared. The house was full of women laughing, passing the baby from lap to lap, eating custom-decorated cupcakes. Blake stayed in the kitchen making coffee, feeling a little out of place but happy to see Harper genuinely smiling for the first time in weeks. That's when he heard Jenna, one of Harper's closest college friends, ask out loud, "Harper, you mentioned a mom support group, right? Some of us are interested. Where do they meet? Which church?" Blake stopped stirring sugar into his coffee. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Harper freeze with a cup in her hand. "Oh, it's kind of far from here," Harper stammered. "You probably won't want to drive all the way out." Another friend, Stephanie, tilted her head curiously. "No problem. I'm desperate for support. What's the group's name? I can look it up online." Harper forced a laugh. "I don't think they have a website. It's pretty informal, you know." The room fell strangely quiet for a moment. Jenna exchanged a look with Stephanie. Blake felt something cold run down his spine. Later that night, after everyone had left and Emma had finally fallen asleep, Blake lay in the dark thinking about that exchange. Why had Harper gotten so defensive? Why couldn't she give a simple name or address? He turned to look at her, but Harper was facing away, already asleep, or pretending to be. Blake picked up his phone and started searching for new mom support groups in Atlanta. There were several, most meeting at hospitals or community centers during the day. None met on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. None met in downtown churches. The following Tuesday, Blake decided to do something he never imagined he'd do. He left work early, claiming a headache, took Emma to his mom's house, and returned home by 6:30. Harper was putting on makeup in the bathroom when he walked in. "I thought you didn't get off until 9, she said, startled. "I started feeling better. Thought I'd go with you tonight. Meet the group." Harper's eyes widened. "No. I mean, it's women only. Men aren't welcome. It's about female experiences, you know?" Blake nodded slowly. "Sure. Makes sense." But it didn't. After Harper left, Blake sat in the dark living room for 20 minutes, his phone heavy in his hand. Finally, he made the call that would change everything. Randall Private Investigations had good online reviews. The man who answered had a gruff but professional voice. Blake explained the situation, his throat tight, feeling both ridiculous and terrified. "I just want to know if she's really going to a support group," he murmured. "That's all." Randall, the detective, was gentle. "I understand, sir. I'll start tonight. I'll send updates via encrypted messages. You'll have answers within 48 hours, tops." Thursday morning, while Blake was at work organizing inventory, he got the first message. A photo. Harper walking into a neon-lit establishment, Spotlight Karaoke Bar. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, his hand casually resting on the small of her back. Blake had to sit down. The letters on the screen blurred. It wasn't a support group. It never was. He took a deep breath, trembling, and typed back, "Keep following. I need to know everything." By Friday afternoon, Randall sent a full report. It wasn't just 2 nights a week. Harper had been going to that bar at least 4 nights a week while Blake was at work, leaving Emma with babysitters he didn't even know existed. The man was Colin McCarthy, a 29-year-old bartender with tattoos on his arms and, according to social media, a history of toxic relationships. The photos showed kisses in the parking lot, intertwined hands, Harper laughing in a way Blake hadn't seen in months. The gut punch came with the report's final line. Based on social media conversations and staff statements from the bar, the relationship appears to have started approximately 6 months ago. 6 months. Blake did the math with shaking fingers. Harper had been 6 months pregnant 6 months ago. He'd been assembling the crib. She'd been meeting a bartender at happy hours he didn't even know she attended. The pieces snapped together in a nauseating way. The networking events she'd mentioned during her pregnancy. The time she came home late smelling of alcohol but claimed it was just a glass of wine with clients. Blake had always trusted. Never questioned. After all, Harper had been pregnant. Who cheats on their husband while carrying his child? Blake spent the weekend on autopilot, caring for Emma while Harper slept in late and constantly checked her phone. He didn't confront her yet. He needed a plan. On Monday, he called Randall again. "I need one more thing. Text messages, if you can get them. And I want to know exactly what she said to him about me and Emma." Randall hesitated. "That could be painful, sir." Blake let out a humorless laugh. "It already is." The messages arrived Tuesday morning. Blake read them in the work bathroom, locked in a stall, biting his fist to keep from screaming. Harper had told Colin she was trapped in a dead marriage. That Blake was controlling and boring. That she was just waiting for the baby to be born to file for divorce. There were love messages sent while she was in labor. Literally between contractions, Harper had found time to send Colin a purple heart saying, "Can't wait to be free and start our life together." Blake walked out of the bathroom, called in sick, and went home. He found Harper in the living room, Emma asleep in the stroller beside her while she watched TV. "We need to talk," Blake said in a flat voice. Harper looked up, irritated. "About what?" "I'm busy. Busy watching a reality show. Busy ignoring her daughter." Blake felt fury boiling inside him. "My mom's picking up Emma in 10 minutes. Your parents are coming over for lunch Sunday, right?" Harper frowned. "Yeah, why?" Blake gave a joyless smile. "Just confirming." Sunday arrived cloudy and cold. Harper's parents, Richard and Diane, were deeply religious, conservative people who'd attended the same Baptist church for 30 years. They adored Blake, seeing him as a good husband and provider. They arrived at noon with an apple pie and warm smiles. Harper was tense but polite, serving lemonade and pretending everything was normal. Emma was with Blake's mom, who'd agreed to keep her granddaughter for a few hours, without asking questions, though her eyes showed she knew something terrible was coming. They were halfway through lunch when Blake set his fork down with a metallic clink. "I need to share something with you," he began, looking directly at Richard and Diane. Harper froze with a piece of chicken on her fork. "Blake, not now," she hissed. He ignored her. "Harper hasn't been going to any mom support group these past few weeks. She's been going to a karaoke bar downtown. With a man named Colin McCarthy." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Diane dropped her glass, spilling lemonade on the tablecloth. Richard turned pale. Harper shoved her chair back. "Are you crazy? You followed me?" Blake shook his head calmly, though his heart pounded. "I hired someone. And I found out a lot more than I expected." He pulled out his phone and slid a manila envelope across the table. "There are photos in there. And printed text messages. Feel free to read." Harper tried to grab the envelope, but Richard was faster. His hands shook as he opened it and saw the first photo, Harper and Colin kissing against her car. The second photo showed them entering a cheap motel. The texts were worse. Diane covered her mouth, tears instantly filling her eyes. "Harper Lynn," Richard whispered, using his daughter's full name as he did when she was a child in trouble. "Tell me this isn't true." Harper stood so fast her chair toppled over. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be trapped, smothered. Blake is obsessive, he controls me, Blake cut her off, his voice now hard as steel. "I wake up every night to take care of our daughter while you sleep. I work double shifts to pay our bills while you pretend to have freelance projects. And you've been meeting a bartender since your 6th month of pregnancy. Don't talk to me about being smothered." Diane's expression shifted from shock to utter horror. "During your pregnancy?" "Harper, you were pregnant and, she couldn't finish the sentence. Richard stood, his chair screeching. Is this the upbringing we gave you? Is this the woman we raised? His voice rose. You made vows. Before God. And you broke them while carrying an innocent child. That's when the doorbell rang. Blake felt a bitter smile tug at his lips. He knew who it was. Harper must have realized too, because all the color drained from her face. Blake walked calmly to the door and opened it. Colin McCarthy stood there, exactly as in the photos, wearing a leather jacket and looking confused. Hey, I'm looking for Harper. She hasn't replied to my messages and his words died as he saw Harper in the background, flanked by her severe-looking parents. Blake stepped aside with a sarcastic gesture. Come on in. We were just talking about you. Colin hesitated, but Harper yelled, Colin, go away. Now. But Colin was looking around the house, seeing the reality for the first time, the wedding photos on the wall, the stroller in the corner, the scattered toys. You said you guys were separated, Colin murmured. You said he knew. Blake let out a harsh laugh. I didn't know anything. Until last week, I thought my wife was at a support group. Funny how things work out, huh? He crossed his arms. So, Colin. She promised to leave the boring husband as soon as the baby was born? Is that what she told you? Colin looked genuinely shaken now. He glanced at Harper, then at Blake. Man, I didn't know. She said you two were practically divorced. That it was just paperwork. Blake felt a flicker of pity for the guy, but it was brief. Well, clearly we weren't. And she lied to you just as much as she lied to me. Welcome to the club. Richard exploded. Get out of my sight. He lunged toward Colin, who quickly backed toward the door. You corrupted my daughter. You destroyed a family. Blake reached out, blocking Richard. He didn't destroy anything. She did that herself. He looked at Colin with contempt. But you should probably go. This isn't your show. Colin didn't need to be told twice. He stumbled out, muttering apologies, and the sound of his car speeding away echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Blake closed the door and turned to find Harper crumpled on the floor. She was crying, but Blake felt nothing but coldness. You're crying now? Seriously? Diane was crying too, but for different reasons. She looked at her daughter as if seeing a stranger. We didn't raise you to be this. We taught you about commitment, about honor. Richard took his wife's arm. Diane, let's go. I can't look at her right now. He looked at Blake, his eyes bright with restrained emotion. Blake, you and Emma will always have a place in our home. As for her, he looked at Harper with disgust. She's not welcome under our roof again until she makes things right with God and herself. Harper sobbed. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm your daughter. Richard shook his head slowly. My daughter wouldn't do this. My daughter wouldn't betray her husband while pregnant. My daughter wouldn't lie to everyone. He and Diane walked toward the door. Before leaving, Diane turned one last time. You can stay at Aunt Carol's apartment for now. I'll call her. But don't come home. The door clicked shut behind them. Harper was now fully collapsed on the floor, hugging her knees. Blake stood there, looking down at the woman he'd loved, trusted, and who'd carried his child. You just lost your entire family in one afternoon, he said calmly. Your parents. Your daughter, because I'm filing for full custody tomorrow. And me. He went to their bedroom, grabbed a suitcase he'd packed in advance, and tossed it at her feet. You've got 1 hour to pack your things and leave. Harper looked up, her eyes red. Blake, please. I made a mistake. We can talk this through. Couples therapy. Anything. Blake knelt to her eye level but kept his distance. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting the milk at the grocery store. You planned this. You lied for months. You texted him while you were in labor with our daughter. You looked me in the eyes every night and lied. That's not a mistake. It's a choice. He stood up. My lawyer will be in touch. Those messages where you said it was a dead marriage and you wanted a divorce will make everything easier. Thanks for documenting it so thoroughly. The irony wasn't lost on him. Harper had condemned herself with her own words. She started protesting, begging, but Blake was already heading for the door. 1 hour, he repeated without looking back. After that, I'm changing the locks. He went straight to his mom's house, where Emma slept peacefully in a portable crib. His mom, Linda, looked at his face and simply hugged him without a word. Blake finally let the tears fall, silent and hot, as he held his sleeping daughter. Emma deserved better. She deserved parents who put her first. Blake vowed right then that he'd be that parent for her, no matter what. The following days were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and tense phone calls. Harper tried reaching out multiple times, alternating between apologies, anger, and promises to change. Blake blocked her number and communicated only through his attorney. The texts she'd sent Colin were legal gold. Combined with the detective's photos and her parents' testimony supporting Blake, his lawyer was confident he'd get primary custody, and Harper would only have supervised visits at first. The news gradually spread through Harper's religious community, first through quiet whispers, then more openly. Her baby shower friends, who'd always sensed something was off, one by one drifted away in the weeks that followed. Jenna sent Blake a supportive message, "We knew something was weird. Sorry we didn't say anything sooner." Blake thanked her, but inside he wondered if it would have made a difference. Harper's parents' church congregation didn't take an official stance right away, but many members individually made their positions clear. Harper felt the weight of judgmental stares and conversations that stopped when she entered. Within weeks, she stopped attending altogether. Colin, as Blake later learned through mutual friends, broke things off with Harper immediately after the scene at his house. Apparently, he had minimal standards when it came to honesty, which was ironic, considering he'd been sleeping with a married, pregnant woman. Harper was left alone, living in her reluctant aunt's tiny apartment, cut off from her family and social roots. 3 months later, the divorce was nearly finalized. Blake was granted primary custody of Emma. Harper would get supervised visitation every other week, provided she attended regular counseling, a requirement Blake's lawyer insisted on, given her history of neglecting Emma. Harper didn't fight much. She seemed broken, a shadow of the vibrant woman Blake had met. On a chilly autumn morning, Blake was pushing Emma in a stroller through the park near his new place, a 2-bedroom apartment he'd rented close to his mom for support. Emma was now 6 months old, growing fast, with his blue eyes and an easy smile. She wouldn't understand what had happened for years, and Blake was determined to shield her from that pain as much as possible. That's when he saw Harper on the other side of the park. She sat alone on a bench, looking too thin and exhausted. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Blake saw regret there, desperation, and maybe even shame. But he felt nothing but a vague sadness for what could have been. He looked away and kept pushing the stroller, focusing on the sound of Emma's laughter as she reached for falling leaves. Linda, his mom, suggested therapy, and Blake went. In sessions, he processed the betrayal, the anger, the feelings of inadequacy. "Do you think you did something wrong?" his therapist asked during one session. Blake thought for a long time. "No," he finally said. "I did everything I could. I was present, I worked hard, I loved sincerely. What she did wasn't about my shortcomings. It was about her choices." That realization was freeing. 6 months after that devastating Sunday, Blake was in a better place. He had a solid routine with Emma, work during the day, nights with his daughter, weekends at the park or visiting his mom. He even started hanging out with friends again, something he'd neglected during the rocky marriage. He wasn't ready to date yet, but he was open to the possibility someday. He was 25. His whole life was ahead of him. Harper continued her downward spiral. Her freelance work dried up as clients caught wind of her tarnished reputation. She tried reconnecting with her family, but Richard kept his distance. Diane visited occasionally, always returning sad and frustrated. "She won't take responsibility," Diane told Blake once during an Emma handoff. "She still acts like a victim." Blake just nodded. It wasn't his problem anymore. The last time Blake saw Harper was at the final custody hearing. She looked small and lost in the courtroom, her lawyer doing the bare minimum. When the judge granted Blake full custody, with Harper allowed only monthly supervised visits, she didn't react. She just stared at the floor. As they left, she tried to speak to Blake in the hallway. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." Blake stopped and really looked at her for the first time in months. "I know you're sorry," he said calmly. "But sorry doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't give back time. It doesn't rebuild trust." He adjusted Emma's diaper bag on his shoulder. "I hope you can fix yourself, Harper. For Emma. Because she'll need a mom someday, even if it's not you in the main role." He turned and walked away, and this time, Harper didn't follow. Emma grew up healthy and happy, surrounded by love. Blake never spoke ill of Harper in front of her, even when Emma was old enough to ask questions. "Sometimes adults make big mistakes," he'd explain. "But you were always loved, and that never changed." It was the truth, even if incomplete. Emma deserved more than to be defined by her mother's betrayal. Years later, Blake would look back on that Sunday and realize it was the day his life truly began. Not the wedding. Not Emma's birth. But that moment of clarity when he decided he deserved better, and that his daughter deserved better. He learned that trust, once broken so completely, is rarely restored. And that sometimes, loving someone means letting them go and protecting those who can't protect themselves. Blake never regretted hiring that detective. He never regretted confronting Harper in front of her parents. Because some truths, no matter how painful, need to come to light. And some people show who they really are when they think no one's watching. Harper showed. And Blake saw. And that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.